Somewhere under the Saudi desert, inside a steel pipe wide enough to walk through, water is roaring through the dark right now. Engineers dragged it out of the sea, stripped away the salt, and pushed it hundreds of miles across the sand.
Saudi Arabia is the world's largest producer of desalinated water, where researchers have patented several technologies to extract minerals from water.
And every drop cost a fortune to make. Then they did something that makes no sense at all. Instead of sending it to the taps, they pump millions of gallons straight back down into the ground. It looks like the most expensive mistake on Earth. It isn't. And the reason why will change how you see this desert forever. The country that should not be here. Here's the thing you have to understand first, or none of the rest lands. Saudi Arabia should not work. It sits in the middle of the hyper-arid Arabian Desert, one of the driest places on the entire planet. And it has no permanent rivers, none. No real freshwater lakes either. Look at it from above and it's mostly one color, sand running to the horizon in every direction, broken only by rock. In much of the country, rain shows up at a miserable 100 millimeters a year, about 4 inches. And some years it barely bothers to show up at all. Now, picture what's living on top of all the nothing. Tens of millions of people, sprawling cities, heavy industry, farms that drink like there's a river next door. There isn't. So, the whole story really comes down to one impossible question. In a country with almost no water, where does the water come from? Part of the answer is that the Saudis refuse to waste a single drop the sky gives them. And this part sounds made up. In a desert, they built dams, not a handful, around 522 of them, thrown up across the country since the early 2000s. 500 dams in a place with no rivers to hold back. Read that number again and let it sit. 522 concrete walls, standing across empty valleys that are bone dry most of the year, waiting. It sounds insane until you see what they're actually catching. When rain does come here, it comes violent and fast, tearing down dry riverbeds called wadis that stay dead for months and then, for a few hours, roar back to life. You'd hear it before you ever saw it. A low, rolling growl coming down the valley, then a wall of brown water shoving rocks and sand and whatever the desert left lying around. Left alone, that water would be gone by nightfall, half of it hissing straight back into the sky as steam, the rest soaking uselessly into open ground. The dams grab it before the sun can. Together, they can hold something like 2.5 billion cubic meters, roughly 650 billion gallons. And they double as the only thing standing between a flash flood and a drowned town. One of the biggest, the Wadi Hali Dam out in Al-Qunfuda in Makkah province, holds around 254 million cubic meters all on its own. A genuine wall of water in the middle of the dust, ranking among the largest dams in the entire kingdom. So Saudi Arabia isn't bone dry, but here's the catch that breaks everything open. Everything those 522 dams capture is only a sliver of what the country actually burns through in a year. The dams are a rounding error. The real lifeline is somewhere else, buried, ancient, and quietly running out. The giants beneath the sand. Go down. Far below the dunes sit the real reservoirs, enormous stores of groundwater locked inside ancient rock. And the numbers are big enough to make you relax. Estimates of how much water is down there run into the hundreds of billions of cubic meters. Sounds like enough to last forever. That feeling is exactly the trap, because almost all of it is what scientists call fossil water. Sit with that word for a second. This is water that fell as rain thousands, even millions of years ago, back when the Arabian Peninsula was green, soaked, and cut through with rivers. Picture that for a second. Grassland where the dunes are now, herds moving through it, water running on the surface like it does anywhere else. Then the climate turned, the rivers died, the green burned off, and the water just stayed, sealed underground, waiting in the dark for a rain that would never really come again. And here's the part that should scare you. Once you pump it up, it does not come back. Not slowly, not eventually, ever. Today's pathetic rainfall gets nowhere near refilling it. Spend it, and it's gone. Not gone for a season. Gone for good. Only a tiny fraction of the country's groundwater actually renews itself, and the country drinks far more than that fraction every single day. And it drinks hard. Those pumps feed exploding cities, endless farmland, factories, even green lawns and washed cars out in the sand. Think about that last one. Sprinklers running over grass in a place that hasn't seen real rain in months. Every drop of it pulled from water that took an ice age to collect. The math has never balanced, and it never will. Saudi Arabia pulls out far more than nature will ever put back, betting the whole country on a reserve that can't be refilled, with no promise the next real rain is even coming. Keep pulling at this rate, and one day the giants under the sand simply run dry. More people every year, more thirst every year. This isn't a scary bedtime story. It's the actual clock the entire country is racing against. Before we follow this water underground and find out what they really do with it down there, do me one favor. Take 2 seconds to subscribe, share this with the one friend who'd lose their mind over it, and hit the bell so the next story finds you. All right, because what comes next is the part almost nobody sees coming. So they were cornered. Dams that catch only a trickle, fossil water draining away like a bathtub with the plug pulled and no tap to fill it back up. Recycling that helps, but can't come close to keeping up with a whole nation's thirst, and a coastline on both sides packed with water they couldn't drink a drop of. Every road out of the problem was blocked. So they did the only thing left, something that sounds completely unhinged the first time you hear it. They decided to build their own river. They built a river. This is the part where Saudi engineers buried a river made of steel. Follow the logic. The Red Sea sits on one side, the Persian Gulf on the other. 2 whole oceans they couldn't use. So the plan, hammered out in Riyadh, was brutally simple even if pulling it off was anything but. Rip the water out of the sea and move it wherever the country needs it. The agency behind it, long called the Saline Water Conversion Corporation, now the Saudi Water Authority, laid down a network of pipelines so long it's genuinely hard to hold in your head. According to Guinness World Records, it's the largest network of water pipelines on Earth, 14,217 kilometers of it. Read that again. More than 14,000 kilometers, around 8,800 miles, of pipe snaking under mountains and dunes where nobody will ever see it. The Nile, the longest river nature ever built, runs about 6,650 kilometers. They made an artificial river more than twice as long as the Nile, except this one has no banks, no surface, no glint of light on the water. It just runs, silent and hidden, moving the country's lifeblood while the desert overhead pretends nothing is there. And they didn't lay it out in the open where you could see it. Almost all of it runs deep underground, and that single choice is doing a mountain of work. Out here, the summer air blows past 50 degrees Celsius, 122 Fahrenheit. Run water across the surface in heat like that, and you'd watch a fortune boil off into the sky and pick up filth on the way down. Bury it, and evaporation basically vanishes. The water stays clean and cold, and the earth itself helps hold the pressure steady across those merciless distances. Deep down, the ground barely changes temperature no matter what the sun is doing up top, so the water arrives inland as clean and cool as it left the coast. This was never a vanity project. It was survival. A dead reliable way to push water from the coast into the beating hearts of Riyadh, Jeddah, and Mecca. But laying an 8,800-mile river under a desert doesn't happen with a shrug and a shovel. Nothing about it was easy, and nothing about it was safe. To get there, they had to go to war with the land itself. And the land does not lose gently. Cutting through the mountain in the dark. Picture it. It's hours before sunrise, still pitch black. And a crew is deep inside the Hijaz Mountains, grinding a boring machine into a wall of solid granite and limestone, rock that fights back against every single inch. They're working now in the dark, on purpose, because in a few hours the sun will crack 50 degrees Celsius, and the mountain will turn into a place that can kill you. The air down there is thick with rock dust and diesel. The machine screams against the stone, the whole tunnel shakes, and the crew moves in. The glow of work lights because there's nothing else out here for miles. So they cut before dawn, they blast, they drill, they haul, and they get out before the heat comes hunting for them. Some of these pipes are over 2 meters across, and every section has to be seated perfectly because a rupture or a collapse buried under all that rock is a nightmare nobody walks back from. And when the crews finally punched through the mountains, the desert was waiting with its own menu of ways to break them. Shifting dunes that swallow a trench overnight, so the work you finished yesterday is gone by morning. Dust storms that turn noon into midnight and coat everything. lungs, machines, eyes, in fine grit. Flash floods that drop out of a clear sky and fill a trench in minutes. Every mile of buried pipe meant deep trenching and a constant fight to stabilize ground that flat out refuses to sit still. They beat all of it. Mountains, heat, sand, floods. Every single one of them beaten, mile after mile, so the water could keep moving. And here's the twist that makes you stop cold. Every ounce of that effort, the tunnels, the blasting, the crews cooking in the dark, the billions of dollars, the years of work, is to move salt water. Water not one person on Earth can drink. Take a single mouthful of it and it would make you sicker than drinking nothing at all. So, how does dragging undrinkable seawater across an entire country save a single thirsty soul? Turning the sea into water. The answer is desalination, ripping the salt and the filth out of seawater until it's clean enough to drink. For a country wrapped in oceans it couldn't touch, it's almost a magic trick. The plants swallow the sea and hand back fresh water. Picture the scale of the machinery it takes. Endless rows of membranes and towers, seawater forced through under enormous pressure, salt peeling away molecule by molecule until what comes out the far side is pure. But magic has a bill, and this one is steep. Desalination is a monster for energy. It eats staggering amounts of electricity. A lot of it burned from fossil fuels, which makes this water far pricier than anything pulled up from the ground. And there's a dirtier problem underneath it, called brine, the thick, hyper-salty sludge left behind once the fresh water is drawn off. Dump it back into the sea carelessly, and it sinks, pools along the seabed, and slowly chokes whatever's trying to live down there. Managing it right costs real money, and it never stops. The Saudis looked at that whole bill, the energy, the money, the mess, and said yes anyway. They didn't just dabble, they went all in, hard enough to become the single largest producer of desalinated water in the entire world. You want to feel the scale of it? Out on the Gulf Coast sits the Ras Al Khair plant, a hybrid giant that holds Guinness recognition among the largest of its kind anywhere on the map. It cost roughly $7.2 billion to build. Say that slowly. $7.2 billion for one plant, just to make water. It pumps out around 3 million cubic meters of fresh water a day, nearly 792 million gallons, enough to keep millions of people in whole industrial cities alive, shipped hundreds of kilometers inland through that buried river. So, sit with exactly where we are now. They conquered mountains. They tamed the sea. They built the longest artificial river on the planet to carry the most expensive water in the country. Billions spent, years burned, lives risked. And then, at the very end of that impossible chain, they take that priceless finished water and pump millions of gallons of it straight back down into the sand. Why? After all of that, why on earth would anyone do that? The reason they bury it, because they were never really trying to move the water. They were trying to save it. Here's the trick that changes everything. A reservoir sitting open under a desert sky is a losing bet. Leave water out and that heat and evaporation strips away a brutal share of it every year. Water that costs billions to create. Push that same water down into the ground, and the loss almost completely disappears. The cool, deep rock becomes the biggest, cheapest, most reliable storage tank you could ever dream up. No walls to build, no surface baking under the sun, no leaking off into the air. It doesn't crack in an earthquake, it doesn't need a roof, and it stretches for miles in every direction. So, that's exactly what they do. They take the finished water and inject it right back into the earth, a strategy called managed aquifer recharge. They aren't throwing the water away, they're depositing it. It's not waste, it's savings. And what are they saving it for? The single most ambitious thing the country has ever attempted, the Saudi Green Initiative. This is not a cute little tree planting drive. It's a plan to protect roughly 30% of the nation's land and sea from the desert, and to plant on the order of 10 billion trees, clawing dead ground back from the sand and forcing it to hold life again. 10 billion. Try to picture that many trees going into ground that has been hostile to almost everything for thousands of years. Green belts to break the desert's advance. Cleaner air in cities where the heat bakes straight off the concrete. Cooler streets in a place where the pavement can hit 122 Fahrenheit. and a few degrees is the line between comfort and collapse. Imagine standing on one of those streets a few decades from now. Shade where there was only glare, leaves moving where there was only sand. Whole new cities like Neom and the endless sprawl of Riyadh are building green right into their bones. But you cannot grow 10 billion trees in one of the driest places on Earth on hope alone. You can't lean on rain that won't come, and you can't drain the fossil water that's already vanishing. A green revolution that size needs one thing above everything else: a stable, massive, protected supply of water. And that, finally, is the reason they bury it. The desalinated water pumped into the ground isn't lost at all. It's the bank account that keeps the forest alive, held safe from the sun, waiting for the cities, the industry, and every last tree still to come. The one act that looked like pure madness was actually the smartest move on the entire board. So, step all the way back and look at what they did. A country stared down the end of its own water and flat out refused to die. It built an invisible river more than twice the length of the Nile. It turned the sea itself into drinking water at a scale nobody has ever matched. And then it buried its most precious resource on purpose, not out of panic, but out of foresight. Saving water not for tomorrow, but for people who haven't even been born yet. That's the part that stays with you. Most of us struggle to plan a year ahead. This is a whole nation planning for a century it won't live to see. The results really are hard to believe. Green shoving back against the sand, cities thriving where nature promised nothing but drought, and a hidden reserve underground, quietly holding the entire future up. Thank you for following the water with us. If you were as fascinated by Saudi Arabia's solution as we were, show your support. Like this video, share it, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. And tell us in the comments, which nation do you think faces the biggest water challenge today, and what radical solution might they need? Until next time, keep exploring the mysteries of our incredible world.